The day the lab door slammed shut behind me, the echo of my mother's laugh from the kitchen felt like a knife. "You're a joke, Jamie," she had said, wiping flour from her hands. "A useless beekeeper in training. The world needs scientists, not dreamers." The words hit me harder than any rejection letter. In that instant, my research, months of painstaking fieldwork proving that city pollinators could revive entire neighborhoods, was declared fabricated, my credentials stripped, and I was cast out of the scientific community. The sting of betrayal was raw, but the real wound was the humiliation of being told I'd never amount to anything. I turned away from the sterile corridors of academia, packed a battered suitcase, and drove to the outskirts of town, where the only buzzing sounds were the ones I would create myself. The departure was agonizing, a quiet oath made under the dim glow of a street lamp. I left behind a promising career, a supportive mentor who tried in vain to persuade me to stay the course. My family's scorn followed me like a shadow, their voices ringing in my ears. "You'll starve, you'll be an embarrassment." Yet, with each mile I put between myself and that house, my resolve hardened. I rented a tiny loft above a bakery, bought a handful of wooden hives, and set them on the cracked concrete rooftop of an abandoned warehouse. The city's noise was a constant companion, but the gentle hum of bees became my anthem. Nights were spent reading old botanical texts. Days were spent coaxing reluctant queens to accept their new homes. I was alone, but I was relentless. The ridicule that once felt like a weight now became fuel. I watched the first tiny swarms take flight, and with each new bee I felt the world shifting a little more in my favor. The ascent was anything but smooth. Funding agencies scoffed at my proposal to map urban pollinator networks. They called it a hobbyist's fantasy. I scraped together money from odd jobs, teaching night classes, selling honey at farmers' markets, even designing a modest app that tracked hive health for fellow beekeepers. Each setback was a sting, but I learned to read the signs. A weak colony meant a need for better forage. A barren lot meant untapped potential. I began converting vacant lots into thriving pollinator corridors, planting native wildflowers, installing bee-friendly streetscapes, and collaborating with schools to turn rooftops into living classrooms. The city's skyline, once a concrete monolith, gradually sprouted green pockets buzzing with life. My work caught the eye of a documentary filmmaker who saw the poetry in a bee's dance among skyscrapers. The film went viral, sparking a global conversation about urban conservation. Within 2 years, my research was replicated in megacities from Tokyo to Sao Paulo, and I received invitations to speak at conferences that had once dismissed me. When the world finally recognized the value of city pollinators, the irony was sweet. The same colleague who had fabricated data to ruin my career now cited my findings in a prestigious journal, his name plastered across the acknowledgments. The scientific community, humbled by the undeniable resurgence of urban ecosystems, invited me back, not as a disgraced ex-researcher, but as a leading voice in environmental restoration. Yet the most profound triumph was not the accolades. It was the quiet transformation of the very neighborhoods that had once mocked my dream. The barren lot behind my childhood home, once a dumping ground for trash, now pulsed with life. Rows of lavender, rosemary, and sunflowers surrounded by thriving hives, their honey dripping with the scent of the city's rebirth. The day I returned home, the air was thick with the scent of fresh earth and wildflowers. My mother had prepared a modest dinner, the same chicken stew she'd made for me as a child, but the table was set with jars of golden honey, each labeled with the name of a neighborhood I'd helped revive. My father, stoic as ever, stood by the doorway, his eyes narrowed in a mixture of curiosity and lingering doubt. "What brings you back, Jamie?" he asked, his voice softer than I remembered. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of years of ridicule and perseverance settle into a calm resolve. "I'm here to show you what we can create when we stop listening to the voices that say we can't," I said, my tone urgent yet reflective. the same cadence that had carried me through sleepless nights in the loft. The moment that followed was unforgettable. As we walked through the garden, the hum of bees grew louder, a living soundtrack to our conversation. My mother reached out, her fingers brushing a honeycomb, and a tear escaped down her cheek. "I never imagined," she whispered, "that my son could turn this wasteland into a sanctuary." My father, who had once scoffed at the notion of beekeeping as a career, stared at the thriving hives perched on the old shed roof, his jaw loosening. He knelt, gently lifting a frame, and watched the bees move with purpose. "I was wrong," he said, the words heavy with regret, "and I'm sorry." The family gathered around a makeshift podium, a wooden crate repurposed as a stage, where I shared the story of the transformation. I spoke of the night I first heard the buzzing in the loft, of the countless setbacks, of the community that rallied around the vision. I showed a video of children planting seedlings in the lot, of a local school's science fair where my honey jars were displayed alongside data on pollinator health. The room fell silent, each person absorbing the undeniable proof that the ridiculous dream had become a thriving reality. When the presentation ended, my sister, who had once called me a useless dreamer, stepped forward, eyes shining. "You taught us that failure isn't the end," she said. "It's the soil in which success grows." My brother, who had ridiculed my plans to become a beekeeper, placed a hand on my shoulder, his grip firm. "You proved us all wrong," he admitted, "and I'm proud of you." In that moment, the past dissolved. The family's derision transformed into admiration, not through grand gestures, but through the simple, undeniable evidence of what we had built together. The honey on the table, the buzzing bees, the green oasis that now defined the neighborhood. Each was a testament to perseverance, to the power of turning scorn into purpose. As the sun set, casting a warm amber glow over the garden, I felt a profound peace. The journey had been arduous, the ridicule sharp, but the reward was a harmony that resonated far beyond the walls of my childhood home. I realized that true triumph isn't measured by the applause of strangers, but by the quiet acknowledgement of those who once doubted you. Karma, it seemed, had delivered its verdict, not in vengeance, but in the restoration of dignity and love. Walking away from the house that night, the city lights twinkling like distant constellations, I knew my story was no longer just mine. It was a beacon for anyone who has ever been told their dream is absurd. The lesson was clear. When you nurture your purpose with relentless dedication, the world eventually bends to your vision, and even the harshest critics must confront the undeniable truth of your success. And in that confrontation lies the deepest, most satisfying redemption of all.